11 spine-chilling tales of sinister moms. The unexplained night they turned psycho revealed that air was thick with foreboding as Halloween loomed over Maplewood, Illinois. In the shadows of the tree-lined streets, whispers of dread twisted into the cold night breeze. Every child dressed as ghouls and ghosts, but little did they know that the real horror lay not in costumes, but in the hearts of their own mothers. Sarah Evans, a single mother and nurse, had become the reluctant puppet in a macabre play, as her smile faded into shadows, replaced by dark anxiety. She had battled her own demons long enough, but now sinister threads of madness began to unravel her very existence. After a nightmarish shift at the local hospital, Sarah arrived home to find her 7-year-old son, Tommy, bouncing with excitement as he clutched something wrapped in old, faded newspaper. The dim light caught a glimpse of the object, a doll. It bore an eerie resemblance to Sarah, with maliciously exaggerated features and a twisted smile that sent chills down her spine. "Look, Mommy! I found her!" Tommy exclaimed, his voice soaring with joy. But as Sarah's heart sank, she felt the weight of darkness seep into their cozy home. The doll seemed harmless, a simple plastic figure donned in frayed clothes, yet each passing night, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Strange occurrences began to pepper their lives. Kitchen doors creaked open when no one was near, and an unsettling giggle echoed through the hallways, reverberating off the wooden walls like a haunting lullaby. The shadows lurking in the corners whispered secrets only Tommy seemed to understand, but the innocence he wore began to feel like a mask, hiding something grotesque beneath. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." As Halloween approached, the neighbors filled the air with delight, carving pumpkins, adorning their yards with ghostly figures, but Sarah felt the walls of her facade crumbling. Mrs. Peterson, the seemingly sweet old lady across the street, cornered her with hollow eyes. "That doll, dear, she brings out what lies beneath," she warned, her breath laced with rot. The other mothers had started to glance at Sarah with a mix of pity and disdain, their conversations laced with the hidden histories of betrayal that she thought long buried. With every unsettling laugh from Tommy, the fear deepened. Could the doll be a conduit for the darkness festering in her life? As she clutched the doll in the dimness, it felt alive, almost responsive to her growing despair. Secrets hidden in the quilt of Maplewood began to thrum, pulsing with pain, echoing ancient cries of mothers wronged in ways that chilled Sarah to the core. The weight of judgment pressed down hard, and the horror grew as she fought an enemy emerging not from the outside, but from within. In that suffocating moment, Sarah understood the darkness was not just in the doll, but in her, festering fears demanding to be released. Tommy's voice broke the tense silence, a sing-song murmur breaking the rising terror. "Mommy, she wants you to play." Panic surged through Sarah. How long could she hold the darkness at bay? The walls seemed to lean in, shadows pulsing with an energy of their own. Sarah's heart raced. Would the neighborhood accept her? Or was she destined to join the throng of undefinable horrors, drowning in the weight of a mother's love turned sinister? As she stood there, gripped by terror, one chilling thought gnawed at her. Sometimes, the most terrifying monsters aren't the phantoms lurking in the night, but the echoes of our own past that refuse to remain buried. The sun dipped low beneath the horizon, casting long, menacing shadows across Maplewood. The festive orange and black decorations that adorned the neighborhood felt out of place against the growing unease in Sarah. She paced her home, the doll's watchful eyes reflecting the failing light, and each tick of the clock on the wall echoed the dread in her heart. "Tommy, time to get ready for bed," she called out, but her voice cracked. The house felt oppressive, the walls a prison closing in around her. Tommy was too busy playing with the doll in the corner, whispering to it words she couldn't hear. She watched him, eyes widening as the doll bobbed slightly in his small hands, as if animated by some unseen force. The unsettling giggle echoed through the house again, this time stronger, like a pulse reverberating from the very foundations. Sarah's breath hitched. She could feel the walls trembling with anger, as if the house itself were alive, resonating with the darkness that had seeped into her life. "Tommy," she said, nearing desperation. "Come here." He turned slowly, his eyes wide and vacant. The innocence that once danced in them faded, replaced by a chilling vacancy. "Mommy, she doesn't want me to leave," he murmured, clutching the doll tightly to his chest, the smile on its face more malevolent than ever. "Who doesn't he?" Panic clawed at her throat. She felt an uncontrollable urge to grab the doll and toss it away, to rid her life of the dark presence that had begun to wrap around her heart like a serpent. Tommy's laughter twisted, an echo of something dark and sinister. "The doll. She wants to play forever." He raised the doll high, as if offering it to the shadows that danced behind him. A shiver ran through Sarah. She stumbled backward, the chill of fear making her legs weak. "No! We can't play with it anymore, Tommy." The power of her words felt feeble against the sinister atmosphere closing in. Mrs. Peterson's warning played in her mind like a haunting refrain. "The doll, dear, she brings out what lies beneath." The lights flickered briefly, and in that moment of obscurity, she saw them figures in the corners of her vision, mothers with vacant eyes, their mouths twisting into grim smiles. Sarah's heart raced. They were watching her. She felt the blood drain from her face as memories clawed at her, darkened corners filled with unspoken fear and regret. "It's just a toy," she whispered feverishly, clenching her fists as if that could anchor her to reality. "We have to get rid of it." "It's not real, Tommy." But her son turned back to the doll, and for a moment she saw her own fear mirrored in his tiny frame. In that brief flicker of connection, she understood the doll had burrowed itself into more than just the physical realm. It was pulling Tommy's spirit, coiling within him. Suddenly, her phone buzzed violently against the table, breaking the tension. Glancing at the screen, Sarah was greeted by a flood of messages from the other mothers. They spoke of odd incidents, shadows veiled in gloom, and a growing sensation of dread that clung to their households. Fear crept in, gnawing at her sanity. What was happening in Maplewood? With a boldness she barely felt, Sarah stood tall. "We are not playing anymore." She reached out to snatch the doll, but Tommy's grip tightened. His eyes glinted, all innocence shed away. "Mommy, she wants you to play," too. His voice was eerily calm, a sinister chant that sent shivers down her spine. At that moment, she felt the walls closing in, the weight of past horrors binding her tightly. Would she succumb to the madness? Or could she fight back the tide of darkness? The air thickened with anticipation, each heartbeat sinking with the whispered breaths of mothers long gone. "Join us," a chorus of voices echoed in the night. "Join us," and just as dread overtook her senses, a realization crashed like thunder. This was no longer just about Tommy and the doll. It was about the whole neighborhood, their closeted horrors woven together with threads of common fear. Could she uncover the truth before it was too late? Or would Maplewood become another tale swallowed by the whispers of its past? The room enveloped Sarah, a pressure cooker of dread and despair. Tommy stood rooted, a strange serenity shadowing his face as if he were a marionette tied to strings she could not see. A chorus of whispers danced around them, weaving a tapestry of disquiet that filled the air with a suffocating weight. "Tommy!" she shouted, her voice cracking. Desperation fueled her resolve. "Let it go. We need to." Suddenly, another flicker of light plunged the house into darkness. Her heart raced, pulse quickening with every beat. The ominous laughter resounded once more, echoing in the void like a twisted lullaby. The shadows seemed to coil tighter around the room, and for a fleeting moment she thought she saw the outlines of children, lost and forlorn, their faces pale. "Mommy, she says it's time for you to play," Tommy's voice chimed, disturbingly melodious. The words warmed her insides with ice, and she could feel the doll's malevolence coiling around every syllable like a serpent lying in wait. "Tommy, listen to me," Sarah pleaded, stepping forward, but the doll caught her gaze, its eyes now a swirling abyss of darkness. "You're stronger than this. It's just a toy." The room became a war zone of wills, toy versus mother, the edges blurring in the chaos. Tommy's grip tightened further, the doll resting near his heart, its painted smile a cruel imitation of warmth. The weight of that playful facade masked something more sinister, and she felt the irony sinking deeper. The very object intended to entertain now sparked terror. Each second eclipsed the last as she tried to reach him, to break through. "Tommy, I love you. We can fight this together." His response sent a chill racing through her. "But she loves me more, Mommy." His lips curled into a smile that was not his own, distant and vacant. "She wants to keep me safe." Her stomach twisted. Echoes of the neighborhood's whispers struck with violent clarity mother's warning of the doll's sinister charm, of children lost to something unspeakable. The fabric of Maplewood pulsed with the unending desire to consume, and now that hunger had encroached upon her home. "Tommy!" she shouted again, her voice a desperate plea infused with urgency. As her heart pounded like a drum, she lunged forward, summoning every ounce of courage. But her movement triggered a cascade of shadows, and suddenly the air was filled with more than whispers. The walls trembled as the doll's giggle rose into a chilling chorus, spreading through the house like a living thing. Darkness fluttered around her like bats, and Sarah felt new figures materialize in the corners of her vision, women cloaked in sorrow, eyes cast low, beckoning her into the abyss. "Join us," the rhythm entwined with the chill in the air, reverberating like an ancient curse. The past surged forth, twisted faces of the mothers who had worn sadness like a shroud. With fear sparking a primal response, Sarah threw herself toward Tommy, whose laughter now twisted into something malevolent. She grasped his shoulders, looking deep into his eyes, searching for the little boy she knew behind the curtain of shadows. In that moment of contact, she felt it a pull, an encompassing surge from the doll that sparked a riot of emotions. Dread clawed at her, demanding her surrender. "Tommy, don't let it take you!" she screamed, feeling the darkness attempt to draw her in, and then, as if defying reality itself, just behind her came a slamming sound. The front door burst open, wind howling, the heavy scent of earth and decay rushing in. A voice cut through the chaos. "Sarah! We need to get out of here." It was Rebecca, a friend from the neighborhood, hair wild, eyes wide with terror. "Help!" Sarah choked, heart racing with hope and despair. "You have to help me save him." But the doll began to pulse, Tommy giggling gleefully, shadows thrumming with life. "She wants us all, Mommy." In that moment, Sarah understood. This darkness was not isolated, it bore its roots deeper within Maplewood than she could comprehend. And soon, more would be drawn into its sinister web. But could they escape? Or was it too late? And what about the other mothers, the ones she could feel converging? As Rebecca reached for them, Sarah's eyes darted toward the doll, feeling its unholy grip tightening as the night loomed heavy. Join us. What had once been a child's plaything now taunted them with sinister promise. Could they break free, or would Maplewood claim them all? The whispers of darkness grew louder, their chilling embrace the last thing she sensed before everything went black. The darkness enveloped Sarah as consciousness ebbed away, a shroud of shadows wrapped around her mind like an unwelcome guest. Yet, as the last slivers of light slipped away, a sudden awareness flickered within the void. She was not alone. A collective presence stirred around her, a crowd of disembodied spirits suspended in a stifling haze of sorrow and lament. The air was thick with whispers, a symphony of silent screams, a chant of mothers long lost to their fears. Sarah's heart raced, breath hitching as she fought against the creeping sensation of being drawn into their dismal eternity. "Tommy!" she screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the oppressive gloom. Images flashed through her mind, moments of happiness, laughter and the sun. She couldn't let this darkness take those memories. The doll's pulse resonated ahead like a heartbeat, echoing in her ears, and she clawed at the tether of light, refusing to let her son be claimed. "Fight it! You're stronger than this." Her thoughts reached for Tommy, anchored by love and desperation. Silence draped itself around those words, but she sensed an answering flicker from him, a hint of warmth struggling to surface. "Sarah!" A soft voice cut through the shadows. It was barely a whisper, trembling like a fragile leaf in the wind. Her heart soared. He could hear her. She focused, drawing in a deep breath, forcing light into the abyss. Tommy, I'm here. I love you. Remember our games? Remember Daddy and the kite? The memories rolled out, their warmth creating a shimmering barrier against the cold darkness. In response, the shadows writhed, pained shrieks echoing like thunderclaps, reproachful murmurs hissing through the air. She's trying to take him, floated a voice entwined with malice. The specter surged forward, drawn by her defiance, hot breath snaking around her exposed skin, creeping closer, wanting to engulf her. They're angry. Tommy's voice strained, its sweetness edged with fear. Mommy, they don't want you here. Just then, another flicker of light broke through, revealing the gruesome tableau, a haunting array of swirling figures with sunken eyes and jagged mouths, their faceless moans vibrating through the air like guttural thunder. An impression of what they once were struck her solidly, mothers whose love had morphed into vengeful despair. But where was Rebecca? Had they pulled her in two? Tommy, hold on! She cried, desperation slicing clean through the veil of shadows as panic rose in her chest. You have to fight. You have the strength. Tommy burst into laughter, but it was sharp and empty, echoing with a tainted joy that pricked at Sarah's sanity. But she's so much fun, Mommy, she's everything I wanted. In that moment, as he twisted with the doll's hold, the final strands of darkness lunged toward her, hungry for her anguish. A rush of icy air swept over her, the devouring tide threatening to drag her deeper. Sarah gasped, casting her mind outward. Rebecca! If you're here, you have to help me. But then, there came a crash, shattering through the silence, the resounding loneliness of despair. Get away from them! A voice roared back, deep and fierce, cutting the shadows, but the fear in its timbre echoed the same uncertainty Sarah felt. Within the chaos, Sarah struggled, feeling the darkness retreat just a moment, hesitation flickering in the abyss. Then she saw it. The doll's eyes flared, swirling with rage and jealousy as she tightened her grip. Join us, it whispered, a promise of oblivion. A chill danced down her spine. What if they claimed Rebecca next? What if Maplewood's unholy grasp took them all? Fight, Tommy! I believe in you! As her son turned, she prayed for the last flame of hope. But in that moment, the world around them shuddered, shadows swelling violently, sweeping the walls, edges closing in. Something deep and ancient stirred within the house, and a sensation, raw and primal, ignited in her gut, the unknowable hunger of the town itself, boiling just beneath the surface, waiting. Would they face that sinister force together? Or would they be drowned in its infinite darkness? The air thickened, a promise of betrayal hanging heavy between them. Sarah's heart beat wildly in her chest, the sound drumming in her ears as the cold, clammy air pinched at her lungs. The swirling shadows whispered louder, the voices of the lost becoming a cacophony of despair. They clawed at her mind, seeking to push her into the same abyss they inhabited, to wrap her in their eternal sorrow. She knew she couldn't let that happen. Tommy! Her voice cracked, desperation spilling from her lips like blood from a wound. Cling to me, baby. We can fight this together. Yet, as she spoke, Tommy's laughter echoed, a sound twisted and sinister. She lets me play, Mommy. She lets me be free. The words dripped with darkness, each syllable a reminder of the grip the doll had over him, a grip born of lost love and otherworldly malevolence. Panic surged through Sarah's veins. She was losing him. The doll's eyes glowed with a malevolence that smirked down at her, as if savoring each ounce of her anguish. You don't understand, it hissed, its voice smooth and seductive. We are family now. No! The fear settled heavily in her stomach, and she fought against it, instinctively reaching for the threads of their shared memories. Do you remember flying kites in the park? How the wind would lift you up? Sarah's voice turned into a shout against the impending despair. Do you remember our picnic? With the sandwiches and the juice boxes? That was fun, Tommy. Each memory, a flicker of light in the overwhelming darkness, struggled to seep through, giving her the strength to hold on. But even as she fought, The spectral forms swirled around her, grasping at her limbs, hungry for her despair, for her surrender. Mommy, a shaky breath met her, trembling and fragile. I don't want to lose you, then fight with me. Don't listen to them. Another surge of darkness enveloped her. The cold pressed against her skin like icy fingers, and the shadows hissed, You have lost already. You are in our domain. Their voices melded into an unsettling harmony, each pitch laced with irony, as if taunting her very existence. With a sudden jolt, Sarah felt a warmth at her side. It was fleeting, a shard of light piercing the gloom, a tiny flicker that ignited her will. Rebecca! She screamed, calling for the one person who could help shift the tide against the relentless darkness. But as her voice echoed against the abyss, an unsettling silence descended. The chaotic whispers stilled for a moment, hanging in the air like a thick fog. An ominous presence was growing, a creature lurking just beyond the veil of shadow, the very source of the town's hunger. From the corner of her eye, shadows stirred and coalesced around that presence, shapes morphing into something monstrous. It was more than just spirits of the past, it was the void itself, a dark, festering hunger, pulsing with life. The house trembled, as if recognizing its dark offspring. Fight, Sarah, a voice from the outer depths surged, but it was faint, drowning beneath a torrent of despair. Suddenly, the ground shifted. Sarah stumbled, her grip on Tommy loosening for just a split second. He fell back, laughter bubbling around him, the laughter of the doll echoing in cacophonous delight. The darkness surged forward, trying to swallow them both whole. No! Sarah cried, reaching out, struggling against the overwhelming pull. Answers swirled in the shadows around her, a revelation, a truth just out of reach. What if there was a way out? Before she could grasp the thought, a loud crash echoed behind them, reverberating through the bowels of the house. Someone's coming! She knew in her gut it was Rebecca. But was it too late? Would they emerge from this abyss, or would Maplewood claim all of them as its next victims? The tension thickened. The darkness writhed, pressing closer as time slipped away. The darkness shuddered. Sarah's pulse raced as she fought to keep her grip on Tommy. The shadows pressed in like a tide, cold and relentless, swallowing the last remnants of warmth in the room. A gnashing sound echoed through the void, a mockery of laughter that twisted her stomach in knots. Mommy! Playtime! Tommy's voice pierced through the chaos, high-pitched and effervescent, only to be drowned out by the deep, gurgling chuckle of the doll. The air grew heavier, thickening with despair and regret. Don't you see, Sarah? All the fun awaits us. Isn't he just the best? The doll's voice wrapped around her like a snake, squeezing tighter with every syllable. Fear clawed at Sarah's insides. The weight of the shadows was suffocating, as if the very air were made of sorrow. No! Tommy, listen to me. She tightened her grip around her son's hand, feeling the warmth slip further away. We have to resist. Then came the crash once more, louder this time. The floorboards creaked ominously. Somewhere outside the chaos, she felt that flicker of hope. Rebecca was coming. Mommy! Tommy cried, the shadows clawing him closer, deeper into the dark. I want to be free. In a moment of clarity, Sarah shouted, then let us be free together. We can break this. She focused on Tommy, the boy who still believed in sunlight and ice cream, the boy who laughed and played, not a twisted shadow bound to a cursed doll. Then, just as suddenly, the doll's laughter turned sharp and jagged, a knife cutting through the air. Oh no, dear Sarah. You're losing him to the fun. Family means never letting go. The shadows writhed, hungry, vibrating with a malice that set Sarah's teeth on edge. She could feel the presence, the monster waiting at the edge of consciousness, drinking in the turmoil, feeding on her fear like a parasite. A multitude of voices moaned, a symphony of lost souls echoing through the abyss. Sarah, the faint voice of Rebecca, floated toward her like a whisper from the edge of a dream. A flicker of movement, a shadow darting in the periphery, promising salvation. Find me. Fear collided with desperation. She could sense Rebecca nearing, could almost see her form breaking through the veil of darkness. Yet, the creature hungered, clawing at Sarah's mind, casting dark illusions of self-doubt and despair. She felt her strength wavering. "Mommy! I want to go with you!" Tommy shrieked, the innocence in his voice laced with urgency. "I trust you. Let us play." The shadows froze. Time twisted, stretching each second. Sarah's heart raced. "Tommy! Remember the kite?" She forced the memory into the currents of fear. "You can soar above this darkness. We can fly together." A momentary pause took the place of the manic laughter. She seized this moment, tightening her grip, the warmth of Tommy's hands sending sparks of courage through her veins. Suddenly, a flicker of light glimmered far away, a beacon drowning the shadows in soft brilliance. The air buzzed, hope fractured the darkness. "All is not lost, my love." Rebecca's voice surged forth once more. "I'm almost there." But as she steadied herself, the ground beneath them trembled violently. The house screamed in protest, a predator refusing to relinquish its prey. "Fight, Sarah!" The voice urged again, now stronger, echoing alongside the crack of thunder that reverberated through the walls. In that chilling moment, everything shattered. The reality around her splintered into a kaleidoscope of shadows and echoes. Darkness poured through the cracks like molten tar, and it surged forward, eager to reclaim its lost spirits. "No!" Sarah screamed, force reverberating in the air. The connection with Tommy slipped, and as he fell away from her grasp, she knew she had to make a choice. "Do I save him, or do I fight for both our souls?" Panic surged as she locked eyes with Tommy, the terror etched in his expression mirroring her own. And behind them, the laughter grew, and this time, it was not just the doll's "look what I've found." As the reality around her warped and twisted, Sarah felt the shadowy fingers of fate tightening their grip. Would Rebecca make it in time? Or would the house devour them whole before salvation arrived? A choice loomed like a dark cloud overhead. Would the horror end in tragedy, or would she save them from the darkness? The walls of despair began to close in, leaving her breathless. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest as she felt Tommy slip further from her grasp, the shadows swirling like a tempest around them. The doll's laughter echoed in the depths of the darkness, plucking at her sanity like a fraying string. "What if you don't save him, Sarah?" The doll crooned, its voice a wet rasp. "What if it's too late?" "No!" Sarah shouted, desperately stretching her arms toward Tommy, who was now surrounded by swirling tendrils of shadow. The air thickened, choking her voice. With a breath that felt like fire, she willed herself to think clearly. The flicker of light, the promise of Rebecca's arrival, spurred her. "Tommy, you have to fight. Remember the time we flew the kite? You soared higher than the clouds. You can do it again. Believe in us." For a fleeting instant, she saw the recognition in his eyes, a window of hope against the encroaching abyss. But it was shattered as the shadows began to claw at him, merciless in their grip. "Mommy! Help me!" he cried, his small voice tinged with terror. With each cry, Sarah felt the icy tendrils of despair snaking around her heart. She remembered the first time he smiled, his playful giggles that filled their dim house with light. Determination surged through her veins. She couldn't let him be lost to this nightmare. Not now. Not ever. "Tommy, listen. Hold on to me. I'll pull you back," she screamed, forcing energy into her voice, pushing against the overwhelming tide of shadows. As she reached out, a cold wind swept through the room, and the walls shuddered like they were alive. She felt the house warping, shifting, trying to swallow them both. Then, just as her fingers barely brushed Tommy's hand, darkness encompassed him, a swirling loop of despair. Sarah locked eyes with the doll, and for a moment, fury overtook her fear. "You think you can take him? I'll never let you win." The room erupted in cacophony. The laughter escalated to a fever pitch, mocking and cruel. Sarah's resolve hardened. She focused on Tommy, on the laughter that still lived within him. "Dig deep, love. You have the strength to move past this." In the flicker of despair, the light flickered again from the distance, brightening the swirling darkness just enough for her to see Tommy's face. His eyes were wide with fear, but he was also searching. Searching for her. "Mommy, help!" he cried, feeling the weight of the shadows clinging to him. "Focus, Tommy. We're a team. Use our memories." As she spoke, the warmth of love surged around her, forming a fragile shield against the encroaching gloom. Suddenly, an awful silence fell. The doll's laughter stilled, replaced by a stomach-churning growl, as if something ancient and fierce was awakening within the house. The shadows recoiled slightly before surging back, angrier than ever. "How brave! But it won't be enough." Desperation clawed at Sarah's throat as she extended her hand one last time, willing her strength into the space between them. Their fingers finally met, but the shadows began to rip through the fragile bond they had formed. "Mommy! I'm scared!" Tommy yelled. The ground shook violently, splintering beneath her feet. The choice Sarah once had crystallized into clarity. It was no longer about saving one or the other. It was about standing firm. She took a deep breath. "We choose to fight or we choose to fade. Together." With a surge of power, she yanked him toward her as the world bent and twisted around them. For one fleeting moment, the shadows hesitated, unsure of how to confront the unstoppable force of a mother's love. But as Tommy surged forward, something stirred behind them, something dark and unyielding. "Look what I've found!" It wasn't the doll anymore. It was something worse, something more profound, awakening from the darkest depths of the house itself. Would they manage to escape, or had the shadows finally found their prey? As the roar of the darkness surged with renewed fury, Sarah's resolve trembled. Would Rebecca arrive in time to wield her light? The house trembled, a living entity filled with dark hunger, as they braced for the inevitable confrontation. The shadows writhed like serpents, tightening their grip, pulling hard on both Sarah and Tommy. A sound, heavy and guttural, rumbled from deep within the house, echoing like the growl of a monstrous beast. Sarah felt her instincts scream at her to run, but she couldn't abandon her son. "Stay with me!" she shouted, the intensity of her voice crackling in the air. Tommy's face was twisted in terror, eyes pleading, as the shadow tendrils clawed at his small body. "Mommy! It hurts!" he gasped, his breast turning shallow. It felt like the darkness was gnawing at him, consuming what made him her boy. Each second felt like a lifetime. The air thickened, and the stench of decay filled her lungs like a heavy blanket. Sarah's heart raced as she fought against the grip of despair. She had to push forward. "We can do this. Remember the light at the park? The sun shining through the trees, those moments we laughed and played?" Her voice trembled as she tried to invoke their happiest memories, to drown out the encroaching dread. Suddenly, from the depths of the swirling black mass, a figure emerged. It floated closer, a grotesque caricature wrapped in shadows. Its face was a mask twisted with malice and joy, the doll's laughter echoing as if it birthed from its very core. "How sweet! A mother's love! But do you really think love can overcome darkness? You're too weak." With every word, the shadows around Sarah thickened, the weight of their oppressive presence pressing down around her. Panic clawed at her sanity as she met the creature's gaze. What was left of the doll was merged with an entity that was pure, mind-bending terror. A fear that chilled her bones. "Sarah," the doll crooned, its voice sickeningly sweet. "Don't you see? You'll never escape. The house hungers for flesh and fear. It wants your little boy and you too." It burst into laughter again, ringing like bells from the deepest pits of her mind. Sarah could feel despair creeping in, wrapping its fingers around her heart. She wouldn't let it win. She drew from every ounce of love she had. "Tommy! Remember the time we made this snowman? You named him Frosty. Together, we made him the biggest one in the neighborhood." For a moment, she saw a flicker of recognition in her son's eyes, a spark of joy amidst the darkness. "Frosty!" he shouted, as if holding onto it would rescue him. The shadows trembled, almost as if disturbed by their shared memory, but the darkness didn't relent. With a furious howl, the shadows surged forward, and the vile entity twisted toward them, its form changing to reflect every nightmare Sarah had ever faced. You think your love is stronger than my desire? I crave fear, despair, and you will give it to me. The walls of the house began to crack and split, fragments peeling away, revealing grotesque faces within the wood, their expressions twisted in eternal agony. Sarah backed up, frantically looking for an escape route, but each step felt like she was sinking deeper into quicksand. Stay behind me, Tommy! She barked, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. The temperature dropped, and she could see her breath misting in the air. Shadows whirled around her, a dark storm ready to consume everything in its path. Then, just then, an ear-splitting crash echoed, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. A beam of light erupted from the far corner of the room, bright as the sun, cutting through the shadows like a knife. Rebecca! Sarah whispered, hope igniting within her. Hold on, Sarah! Rebecca's voice rang out, fierce and unyielding, as she emerged into the chaos. But there was no time to waste. The malevolent laughter intensified, drowning out everything else, and the shadows writhed hungrily. As the monstrous tide of darkness reared back, the confrontation heightened. Would Rebecca's arrival be the salvation they needed, or had they crossed the threshold into damnation? The shadows gathered closer, ominous and relentless. In that split second before the darkness lunged, Sarah's heart raced with unease. Would they succumb to the terror that surrounded them, or could they snatch victory from the jaws of despair? Just as the light seemed to pulse in an unsteady rhythm, Sarah realized the choice they all had to make was imminent. Would they face the horror together or risk separation in the depths of shadows? The air crackled with tension. Time hung in the balance. The true test of their strength was about to begin. The shadows screamed as if troubled by the light, recoiling violently yet growing ever bolder from the energy of the doll's twisted laughter. Foolish mortals! It spat, its form contorting grotesquely to enhance the terror of its gaze. The light can't save you. It only makes my feast brighter. Rebecca! Sarah shouted again, desperation gnawing at her throat. The room pulsated with energy as shadows lashed out like vipers, slicing through the air. Tommy! Hold on! Rebecca rushed forward, brandishing the light as if it were a shield. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the grotesque faces in the walls, screaming silently, locked in a dance of agony. Each face told a story, a tale of hopelessness and despair, a warning that clawed at Sarah's sanity. The shadows, enraged by the intrusion of light, lashed out. Tommy shrieked, his small body battered by the force of the dark tendrils. Mommy! It hurts! He cried, tears brimming in his eyes. Stay close, Tommy! Sarah urged, gripping his arm, pulling him toward Rebecca. We can do this! With renewed determination, Rebecca shoved against the storm of darkness, each move eliciting thunderous howls of rage. We have to focus. We have to fight! She yelled, her eyes fierce with determination. As if answering her, the light danced, golden and warm. But just then, the darkness shifted, and a massive shadow consumed the beam, swallowing the hope of the moment. It coiled around Rebecca, who staggered and gasped as shadows slipped around her neck. No! Sarah screamed, lunging forward, only to feel invisible hands gripping her limbs, pulling her back away from her friend and their glimmer of salvation. Sarah! Rebecca cried, her voice strained. The fight was raging within the dark mass, a war between light and shadow. I won't leave you! Sarah screamed back, the anguish in her heart resonating through the air. With each breath, she fought against the suffocating darkness, her love for Tommy and Rebecca fueling her will to resist. Tommy trembled beside her, small and fragile but suddenly resolute. Mommy! We have to make Frosty again! Just like before! He shouted. The child was trembling, but his determination ignited something deep within Sarah. Yes. Frosty! She echoed, desperation transforming into defiance. An ear-splitting roar erupted from the shadows, enraged by their resurgence of hope. The black tendrils converged, pulsing with a ferocity that threatened to rip the very fabric of their reality apart. The grotesque doll's laughter faded momentarily, replaced with a screech that echoed off the walls, filling the room with dread. In that moment of frantic clarity, a startling idea gripped her mind. Sarah, focus! She urged herself, recalling the memory of laughter and warmth. Remember joy in every winter's day by making something beautiful. Frosty will protect us. With renewed strength, Sarah squeezed Tommy's hand and closed her eyes, channeling all the love and memories of happier days into a single heartbeat. A moment when the world wasn't filled with shadows but with bright, hopeful laughter. Around them, the air flickered, as if the house itself was wavering between worlds. With all her might, she willed the light to grow, to push away the shadows even as they clawed at her skin. Frosty! You can do this! Suddenly, the shadows surged forward, swirling in one concentrated mass. But Sarah felt a shift. The darkness hesitated as the warm glow fought back against the encroaching fear. The walls trembled, and for a split second, it seemed as if the light could win, but victory was a fragile thing. Just then, Tommy's eyes widened in horror. Mommy, watch out! A freezing hand shot through the shadows, aimed directly at Sarah. As the darkness lunged, a blinding flash enveloped the room, converging on them all with blurring intensity. Did they stand a chance, or had they awakened something beyond comprehension? The walls began to split apart, revealing a void beyond comprehension. In that final heartbeat, they were all suspended between light and dark. A decision awaited them, hanging like a leaf. Caught in the wind, what awaited them in the depths of the void? Would they succumb to the whisper of shadows, or could they harness their fading light to escape the mansion's accursed gullet? The blinding light engulfed them like the dawn breaking through a suffocating cloud. Sarah squeezed Tommy's hand tighter, her heart racing, as the shadows writhed at the edges, furious and desperate to reclaim their prey. She could hear the rage bubbling within the dark mass, but the warmth coursing through her felt like a shield, protecting her from despair. Frosty! She shouted, her voice anchoring her amidst the chaos. The memory of laughter echoed in her mind, the joy of bright sunlit days slicing through her fear like a knife. We're coming back, Frosty! She pulled strength from the whimsical sensation of snowflakes falling against her cheek, the excitement of building something together. The light flickered, struggling against the shadows, and in that moment, Sarah felt a surge of hope wash over her. It was the kind of hope that ignited change. Tommy! Remember how we built Frosty? We can do it again! Let us show them our light. She concentrated harder, envisioning a snowman, all the love and laughter they had shared, pouring into that single image, a figure of childhood wonder born of the struggle against darkness. Tommy's eyes sparkled, the fear momentarily eclipsed by determination. Yes, Mommy! Frosty! His voice pierced the dimness, revitalizing the very air around them. The darkness hesitated, caught off guard, as if their joy was a foreign substance invading its territory. Will surged through them both. Sarah felt her will intertwined with Tommy's. Together! She urged, her heart racing. Let us do this. With a strong heave, they focused their energy, the light expanding, illuminating the dark corners of the room. It pushed against the shadows, growing brighter and more vibrant, a shimmering barrier against overwhelming despair. Rebecca's silhouette flickered nearby, fighting against the dark tendrils that sought to engulf her. We're almost there! Bring the light, Sarah! Encouraged, Sarah called upon every cherished memory, the sound of waves crashing during summer, the warmth of hugs that made everything feel safe again, the smell of fresh cookies filling their home. Each thought resonated within the beam of light that they decreated. It surged outward, wrapping around Tommy and her like a cocoon, amplifying their bond, strengthening their resolve. Frosty! They shouted together. The word echoed, a rallying cry against the oppressive weight of darkness. All around them, the shadows recoiled, the echoes of the lost mothers fading in fear of the brightness. You will not take what's mine! Sarah shouted defiantly, her voice resolute, drowning out the chaos and the doll's sickly sweet laughter. Suddenly, the shadows surged forward in one final assault, a last-ditch effort to consume them. But instead of retreating, Sarah pushed ahead with Tommy, as the light burst forth in radiant beams, scattering the darkness like brittle glass. With a blinding flash, they felt the shockwave ripple through the room. The shadows shattered as if they had never existed. All at once, a thunderous crash sounded, shaking the very foundation, and then silence fell, a profound, heavy silence that wrapped around them, soothing and unfurling like a blanket of safety. The air felt different now, lighter, like the release of a held breath. As the brightness began to fade, Sarah looked around. They were outside, back in the peaceful neighborhood of Maplewood. The autumn leaves swirled in the wind, the stars twinkled vibrantly in the night sky, and the eerie presence that clung to the town for far too long had vanished. "Mommy," Tommy whispered, clutching her tightly. "Did we win?" Sarah knelt down, looking deeply into his wide, innocent eyes. "Yes, we did, love. We fought together, like we always should. The darkness is gone." A silhouette materialized nearby. Rebecca emerged from the light framed in the moon-esque glow. She rushed towards them, enveloping them in a tight embrace. "You both did it! You fought the darkness and won!" For the first time in what felt like forever, Sarah's breath came easy. The laughter of children echoed in the distance, and peace flowed through Maplewood once more. As they stood together, Sarah felt a bittersweet ache in her heart. It was not just a victory for them. It was a battle for the lost souls, for the mothers who should not have to haunt the night. "We need to let everyone know," she said, determination refueling her spirit. "We need to warn them about the doll and the darkness here." Across the street, the glow of porch lights beckoned, the sound of laughter floated in the air, a stark contrast to the tainted whispers of before. The chill of dread had finally dissipated. "Together," Rebecca said, as they finally began to move. "Let us rebuild." As they walked, the warmth of dawn crept over the horizon. The night held shadows, but now Sarah knew every shadow needed a light. And together, they could keep that light shining. This was the moment of hope reborn, a promise etched into the hearts of Maplewood, one that would never wane under the weight of darkness again. So, dear friends, remember this tale of a mother South love, hold it close in your heart. And before you go, make sure to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button right now to feed the algorithm. Your support means everything. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second, push that share button and send this video to at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans know the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Let us shine bright together.